Silk Road, once extended by trade and cultural exchanges, still bears the vestiges of ancient civilizations. The travelers are no longer hindered by sandstorms, but they still need wisdom and courage to navigate. In 2006, the U.S. magazine Time covered a story about a man from Hangzhou. China makes the most, but no longer the best silk. Here's one man's quest to recover this nation's past glory. This man is Fei Jianming. Back then, Fei Jianming was in his early 50s. At the bank of Qiantang River in Hangzhou, he was running a company named High Fashion China Company Limited, the largest silk exporting company both in China and the world. However, the Time magazine report deflated his pride.
The report basically says that China makes the most but no longer the best silk. That comment was a snarky reminder. We should produce more than raw materials and half-finished goods. We need to develop end products and build our own brands.
In the 21st century, the global market demands higher quality silk products. Fei Jianming realized that China is lacking in technology.
At High Fashion China Corporation Limited, I started to prioritize quality. The board decided to recruit an Italian team, a team of 8 printing and dyeing experts.
Daniele Pacera is product director at Radi, the largest European silk producer. For many years, he has been producing the world's most premium silk, in collaboration with almost every designer brand in Europe. Today, he's waiting for an old friend from China. 10 years ago, Daniele Pacera and 7 other top-notch Italian professionals arrived in Hangzhou to help Chinese silk producers improve their technology and management. He lived in Hangzhou for 3 years.
I knew Mr. Fei in 2007 before I started working in fashion, and then I worked with him 5 years. And we established a very good relationships.
Years later, the 2 old friends recall their good old days.
I respect him a lot, and we get along quite well.
With the efforts of Daniele Pacera's team, Hangzhou High Fashion China Company Limited achieved major breakthroughs in technique and management in 3 years.
In terms of printing and dyeing technique, the gap between China and Italy has been narrowed down to none.
Silk makers from Hangzhou and Como developed a lasting friendship. For Fei Jianming, silk means more than a career. The bond with silk runs in his family.
I come from a family of silk makers. My great-grandfather tended mulberry trees and silkworms in Huzhou. My grandfather had a small silk mill in Hangzhou. I joined Hangzhou Westlake Silk Mill in 1977 and had stayed in the business ever since. Even when I was a mechanic, I installed many silk looms after learning from my master. I learned a lot from him.
Back then, still under 30, Fei Jianming never imagined that he would stay in this company and in the business of silk for life. sometime between the 1970s and the 1980s. On the other end of Hangzhou, another young man started his silk career as a student.
I thought I only had very few photos, but it turns out to be more. Look, this one is cute. Everyone in this picture had a grade, and I had 59 marks or so.
40 years ago, Zhao Feng, a young student in Zhejiang province, thought he was going to work on the assembly line of a silk company. But he was destined to take on another important mission.
I majored in printing and dyeing in school, a modern technology. But I actually had a stronger interest in liberal arts. So, upon graduation, I did not know what to do next. Then I heard our dean, Professor Zhu Xingyu, was recruiting master candidates on silk history. I was admitted, and then my supervisor established the China Silk Museum, which was really the best job for my major. So I joined up and have never left.
Today, Zhao Feng heads the China Silk Museum. The national-level museum is situated in Hangzhou, a provincial capital, which is very rare in China.
China Silk Museum's mission is to properly collect, preserve, and protect silk products. We are the only key site for protecting silk relics, designated by the State Administration of Cultural Heritage. So we have the strongest capabilities in China. Actually, our scale is also the biggest in the world.
Ancient silk culture is an inexhaustible treasure for Zhao Feng. In recent years, after reviewing the previous literature, Zhao Feng found his pet project in silk civilization studies, the looms of the world.
There are two essential technologies in the history of silk. One is sericulture, another is the loom. There are the two key points for ancient silk technologies. The study of looms is the study of science and technology and the wisdom of the ancients.
In late spring 2018, after meticulous preparations, China Silk Museum was about to host its exhibition on the looms of the world, magic and math in looms.
Let's welcome one of this exhibition's organizers, Mr. Zhao Feng, to give us a speech.
Magic and math in looms. The magic is in the working of the looms, and the math lies in the weaving procedures.
This grand event invited traditional hand-weaving artists, inheritors, and scholars from around the world. A quiet European old couple attracted much attention. They represent traditional Indonesian silk techniques, but they are not local handicraft makers, nor did they have any academic backgrounds. Nestled among the hills of central West Java, this house looks just like its neighbors. But everyone in the neighborhood knows that this is the home of a lovely and eccentric foreign couple. They are from Switzerland, Bernhard Barth and Erika Barth. They are the inheritors of songkat, an ancient silk-making craft in Indonesia. Yet, for the first half of their lives, they had nothing to do with silk.
22 years ago, I came here to learn the language, and I've learned about handicrafts, especially the textile, songkets.
At that time he was living for 2 months here in Sumatra, and it's a very special technique. He thinks it was the most beautiful songket in the whole world. He didn't want to have this, that this was lost.
The Indonesian handicraft songket that fascinated the bards has a history of several hundred years. It is part of traditional Indonesian ethnic garment, once lost in Indonesia due to the changes in lifestyle.
Difference from what has been woven hundreds of years ago and what they were still weaving. Old patterns, very intricate patterns, were not longer woven, and he thought this is a handicraft that has to be maintained, and so he started to do research because he wanted to bring it alive again.
As an architect, Bernhard Bard found a common approach to weaving and architectural drawing. This is a unique method in the world's history of silk weaving.
When he looks at something, at the machine or at the loom, and then he knows how it works. He is not really designing a pattern right from the beginning. He has some kind of traditional pattern and he translates this to a cloth. He's an architect, he knows how to draw.
The Bards have been trying to revive traditional weaving in West Java for years, but they have attracted little local attention, and their project was still financed by their own pensions from Switzerland. As modern weaving develops, traditional techniques are struggling to survive worldwide.
Ja, wij zijn even gezegd om te blijven.
The Bards had no idea how long they could keep this going. But this summer, they got an invitation from China. This is a campaign to promote Hangzhou's image. The city has always placed silk as a major asset in its image, and Fei Jianming is invited as a speaker at the event.
Next up, let's welcome Mr. Fei Jianming to talk about the path of brand building for Hangzhou silk.
Fei Jianming retired from High Fashion International years ago, after seeing the ups and downs of SOE reform and building China's biggest silk exporting company. Now he focuses only on brand building for Chinese silk products.
The silk businesses in Hangzhou must become the shining examples of Hangzhou City.
A chair was provided to Fei Jianming during his speech. Half a year ago, he went through a major surgery, and long hours of standing is too much of a challenge for this feeble old man. In 2018, 66-year-old Fei Jianming was diagnosed with suspected malignancy. It seems that the universe is working against this man on a mission.
A silk professional is affectionately attached to his business. I feel like I could not let go, and life is meaningful to continue.
Three years ago, the retired entrepreneur redefined his identity as the Secretary General of International Silk Union. With this new identity, he's bound to travel a lot.
The International Silk Union had members from almost every continent, except for Africa. So we wanted to recruit new members there. First, we went to the China-Nigeria Fair and found out that Africa, contrary to our imagination, is a continent of dry soil. The environment is perfect for mulberry trees and silkworms. This shows that the silk trade has great potential in Africa, and the prospect is bright for mulberry cultivation, sericulture, and silk making in Africa.
Fei Jianming thought Chinese silk companies would attend this fair in Nigeria. But when he arrived, he found none of them had accepted the invitation.
This material is perfect for suits. Right. And such rich varieties.
Africa is indeed an unfamiliar market for Chinese silk companies.
As we planned our trip, we thought many silk companies would come as well. In the end, not a single one had come. It was a pity. But we do have some fabric and embroidery companies at the fair, and they received quite a lot of clients for business discussion and prospective cooperation. We also brought some authentic silk clothes, and African girls love them. And we can see silk is clearly very popular here. This is also a good trial for our venture into the African market. This is going to help us in the future, and obviously a journey well made.
The bumpy African journey did not dampen Fei Jianming's wish to develop the International Silk Union. His goals are beyond the aspirations of a silk entrepreneur. He has laid his eyes on the broader horizon. With rapid communication and transportation, the silk industries of different countries are interconnected in the world market. And every silk professional is facing diverse competition and cooperation. When China strives to build world-class brands and expand markets, many countries are studying the Chinese experience and taking their first steps in the silk industry. In the past 2 years, Li Qiangwen has been exploring indigenous silk resources in Indonesia.
I am the 4th generation in a family of overseas Chinese. My job at this company is to oversee the sericulture business.
From sericulture to weaving and embroidery, the Indonesians have introduced silk industry from China and preserved this industry for several centuries. However, the scatter producers lack the opportunity for development and funds for consolidation.
As far as we know, no Indonesian company has the capacity to handle everything from mulberry cultivation to sericulture and silk making. No one is big enough to handle the whole industrial chain.
In the countryside of Indonesia, old looms are still at work. Some are operated by hand, and some are partially mechanized. So there's no technical standards. Local weavers have managed to develop a distinctively ethnic style, which, in the eyes of Li Qiangwen, is the treasure of the nation. Today, Li Qiangwen is visiting a very famous silk-themed industrial and landscape park in Indonesia, which covers businesses in sericulture, reeling, weaving, embroidery, and handicraft. However, the products are merely tourist souvenirs. There's no prospect for foreign trade or mass production. Li Qiangwen is one of the few Indonesian overseas Chinese who could speak fluent Mandarin, and that is why his company assigned him to develop silk business. The Indonesians wanted to learn from China's silk industry.
We hoped Chinese silk companies would come to Indonesia to work with and invest in our company. They could share technologies and enhance cooperation on silk between China and Indonesia.
The silk industry in Southeast Asia is trying to grow. While China, already the world's largest exporter of silk products, is preoccupied with brand promotion. Wang Pengcheng, a young man born in the 1980s, is responsible for building the image of a Hangzhou silk brand, Jinglun Tang.
Generally speaking, the silk industry caters to the older population with more traditional tastes. We think Chinese culture can have modern and diverse forms of expressions. We try not to define it, but rather express it in alternative forms.
Every year, this young team comes up with new ideas for promotion among international customers.
Let's see whether we can work with this kind of talk. This talk.
Last year, we introduced the theme of intangible, using a creative setting to project our brand and our attention to detail. This year, our theme is Kun Opera, demonstrated by bamboo and paper at the site. We use paper as a symbol to represent Kun Opera, as they are both fragile and firm.
Today, crossover is a popular word in China. And inhibited by conventional mindsets, young Chinese silk professionals express their ideas in more dynamic and diverse ways.
We use Chinese culture and contemporary art to represent it. If you are detached from the present time and from the young people, then the brand is bound to look old. Our basic principle is to make it modern and artistic.
Since ancient times, the exchanges of silk culture between the East and the West were conducted in many ways, including trade, art, and cultural communication. The silk industry and culture never knew any boundary. Today's young people, in their crossover, has found innovative ways to bring back the ancient silk civilization. It is late July in the chill of London. Fruits are still hanging on the mulberry trees. This surprised Zhao Feng, who has grown up in southern China eating mulberries.
Is it good? Good, quite a lot.
This huge mulberry tree grows in the outskirts of London, in the yard of Needham Research Institute of Cambridge, where Zhao Feng is going to spend some time working.
After I became head of the institute, I realized that Needham had planned 2 volumes on textile, but only finished the one on materials, while the volume on weaving was pending. It was a pity. I was familiar with Professor Zhao, and I know he was capable to finish the other volume. The first time we discussed about this, he showed great enthusiasm to take on the project, and the Institute started this to introduce China to the world.
The Needham Research Institute is one of 4 international research centers on the technology and culture of ancient China. Its founder, Mr. Needham, was a fellow at the British Royal Society, dispatched to investigate China in the 1930s. Drawn by the profound history and culture, he later turned to study China's science, technology, and civilization. Adding a new volume to Needham's work is an honor for any scholar.
Needham has passed away. I'm tracing his thoughts through the records and notes he left behind. if we are ever going to complete this project and finish what Needham started, we still need to do a lot of work. This project will take at least 10 years. 10 years of planning, 10-year project.
Fei Jianming set off again in late autumn of 2018. He was attending the meeting of International Silk Union in Como, Italy. With 80 entrepreneurs, experts, and scholars from 17 countries, he is going to discuss the modern development plan for the Maritime Silk Road. 1 year before this in October, the World Silk Hangzhou Consensus was signed on a plenary meeting. This is a hard-won victory for Wei Jianming.
The Secretariat of International Silk Union was based in France, but due to a lack of funds and staff, the work had been stalled for years. The president of Italian Silk Office proposed that we re-establish this union, and I thought it was a good idea. So I reported to the National Cocoon and Silk Office and the China Silk Association and headed a delegation to attend the European Silk Forum. We had agreed on that forum that the International Silk Union would be re-established with its secretariat set in China. But the chair of European Silk Forum vetoed that plan. So I kind of lost my temper and said, why did you invite us in the first place? And to think I've briefed my superior all about it. After that meeting, the president of Italian Silk Office emailed me to express his apology, and then he offered sincerely to work to set things right for us.
Giuseppe Bianchi is the former president of Italian Silk Office. It is with this support that the union set the secretariat in Hangzhou, China. Bianchi is familiar with silk history and the culture of both the East and the West, and he values cooperation with Chinese silk industry.
I was elected president of Ufficio Italiano SETA, and this was a new occasion to have better cooperation with the Chinese people dealing with silk. I had the occasion to meet Mr. Fei and other people from Hangzhou, and we started to discuss how European and Chinese silk people could cooperate better.
Under Bianchi's influence, European silk professionals who consider themselves at the top of the industry came to China and started working with Chinese companies.
China's silk people are working hard. The world needs to work together.
The song of the mulberry leaf and the silk cocoon lasts 5,000 years. The journey up and down the Silk Road goes 2,000 years. The most magnificent luster of all time begins at the birth of a silkworm. From every corner of the world, trade routes form a brocade of splendor.